All right, here he is. I have been anxiously awaiting his arrival. Because he showed up in Taiwan early in August. And hard to find. And I actually got this guy, an eBay seller in Michigan, had him in on Wednesday for retail. Free shipping. Shipped him out. Here he is today. But it's Studio Series 18 Bumblebee from the new Transformers Bumblebee movie, where he is, as you can see, an old classic Volkswagen. And I've always had a soft spot for Bumblebee because of his yellow Volkswageniness, especially since about a year after I first got a G1 Bumblebee in stores when I was a kid. My dad had sold his old car, and we got, for my Aunt Eileen, we bought her car, which was, in fact, a yellow Volkswagen. It looked almost exactly like this. And we had it for several years. Like, I loved that car, and I thought it was cool. We were driving around in Bumblebee. It drove me to school every day when we lived in Alabama for a while. But anyway, here he is. He is the classic Volkswagen Bumblebee. And now some people have asked about how the yellow paint match looks. And under normal lighting, it actually looks pretty well. And a lot of photographs, like some of the actual yellow plastic, like on the body, versus the painted yellow plastic on these clear parts, which are where the windows are, the doors, and this back window right here. And like I said, under normal lighting, it really isn't that much. You can kind of see, if I tilt it to certain ways, you can kind of see it's not quite a match, but it's not as egregious as a lot of photos make it look. It's actually fairly well matched under normal lighting. So yeah, he's just a little Volkswagen Beetle. He's got the little hubcaps, and he rolls. And it's cool they integrated storage for all of his accessories. His Gatling gun kind of sits here, like almost looking like part of the drivetrain. His blade stores on either arm, and then his face mask swap stores up here under the hood of the car. And I also like, if you look at it from the underside, they kind of make a joke of it in the trailer where like she's looking up underneath the car and you see his face. So I like that it's there. But yeah, pretty nice little Volkswagen, spinning all around with the exhaust pipes back here. Little Volkswagen Beetle. Here he is in vehicle mode with Masterpiece Bumblebee. You see he's a slightly brighter yellow. He's not quite as orangey yellow or mac and cheesy yellow as the Masterpiece. And here he is with G1 Bumblebee. Just because, like I said, G1 Bumblebee, when I mentioned getting my first Transformer, this is the same one. This is I've sold off and traded all of my other G1 Transformers and rebought them. I still have several G1 Transformers in the house. This one is my old school. I may have replaced the stickers at one point, but my old school G1 Bumblebee that I got at a Dillard's, I believe. It was either Dillard's or JCPenney. It was on that little back wall of toys, like that small little toy section. I vividly remember picking them up off the peg, and I hadn't even seen the cartoon at that point. I just said, "Oh, look, this looks neat," and they bought it for me, and that's what started it all off. So I just can't get rid of him. But there he is. So there are the three of them all together. The evolution, I guess, would be more like this, from this to this to this. Bumblebee, at least by release. But yeah, he is fairly small. He's not the studio scale. He's the smaller cars are smaller cars. Now, I will say, before we get into the transformation, the panels here, like this whole canopy, like this piece becomes his thighs, but this whole piece from the hood all the way around to the back window is all one kind of hinged panel. And when you plug it in, like, you can kind of see the detail up here at the top of the windows where there's little slots for it to tab in, and there's a tab up here that tabs into the back of this bumper piece up here. And when you're going back to vehicle mode and you're pressing it all together, grab, like, for here on the window, make sure you're supporting your whatever, whether it's your thumb or if you're holding them upside down, make sure your support point is up here on the top, and then either on the door at the bottom or right here where you see this pin. Kind of grab it by the bumper here and use that to apply the pressure to peg everything in. Because if you push on the arms, they do kind of tab into the centerpiece, but if you use them as a leverage point, it's really easy to smush this whole insides up. And then if you don't have the arms lined up properly, then you can't peg these things into the side of the arms here to lock it in place. So it's real easy to kind of smush everything all up and mess it all up. And then you have to pretty much open up the whole panel again to get those arms straight. So use the pieces, like I said, where those pins are right there, to push these in, and make sure you're grabbing onto the door when you're tabbing these pieces in, because otherwise it's really easy to smush this all up. So yeah. So to transform him, you just follow the included instructions. You actually do them in reverse because he comes in robot mode. It'll show you where to store all the things in robot mode as well. But you get the instructions and you get a little backdrop, and we'll show that off here in a minute. But a transformer, so basically you start off, you just kind of pop. One, take off all the extra accessories. There are storage spaces in robot mode, but they're different. So pop his little battle mask off of the bumper. There's just a little tab on the back for swapping that pegs into the back of the bumper right here. Pop off his arm blade. You can technically leave that on for transformation, but it just pegs into his forearm right here. And then his cannon, you can see there's a little slot right here that pegs on right here underneath the vehicle mode. So take those off. And then you go ahead and start with, lift the whole bumper, like this whole piece right here up, and kind of unlock it by, you can see it tabs in back here as well. So bring this bumper down as well and lift this all up. And then bring his arms, or actually open up the panels here. Bring his arms down like this. Again, there's little tabs here that tab into the sides of this, and his shoulders are going to tab in there in a minute. But open these up, open the wheel wells. They peg in. Again, it's very, like, the first time I transformed him, he didn't quite line up right. There's little pegs here that peg into the back of the wheel well, up here on the gray tab. So make sure you're tabbing everything in place. The instructions are actually pretty decent about showing you how everything folds up and pegs together, which is nice. So open those up, lift this whole panel up, his legs, grab them, and kind of bring his shins down and around. You can see where there's a little curved piece here that fits around this pin. Lift the bumper back to form the back of his calf, and there's little tabs here that will tab into the lower leg here. And then bring his feet. They're tilted like this for vehicle mode. Bring it down and then bring it forward like that. And it's nice, it actually engineers some ankle tilt in there. Does it? Yeah, there's a pin there. So there's some ankle tilt there on his foot. We'll bring those down. Make sure those pin in place. The way the bumper works is a little weird, but make sure you get it all tabbed together, and then that kind of sits straight back from the knee. Then bring his arms out to the side like this. Rotate him at the waist, like that. And then this whole assembly with the door, the wing, and the chest pieces right next to his head pivots all down like that. The whole assembly rotates. Just like that. And then these black pieces peg in where the arms were here on the side of the chest. And then the actual bumper pieces actually compress in a little bit as well too. So push those in up against his body. Rotate his arms and bring him down at the elbow. Flip out his hands. Just like that. And this panel, you fold this up and then this up. And you actually, in the instruction, again, the instructions are really clear about this. There's a kind of a little angled piece up here, right up here. You fold this up, and this actually kind of pull it out a little bit. Make sure it goes all the way. When you get right here, it's going to hit that gray piece, but it's actually intended to pull up and go all the way up over it, like that. And that extra little bit, it doesn't seem like much, but it allows this bumper behind his head to move back enough that you can actually pose his head on the ball joint. If you leave it down lower than that, it pushes this up and it pushes this forward against the back of his head. So make sure you're putting that all the way up there. And then these back windows fold down, much like we've seen on other Bumblebees. And then these panels fold around it. And that's it. There he is in robot mode. Like I said, he does have, right at the inside of the black piece there on his ankle, he's got some ankle tilt as well as forward back there on that hinge. So yeah, there's a cute little Bumblebee in robot mode. And he is little, but we'll show that off in a minute. Now, a lot of the pictures make the backpack look bad. And it does stick out a lot from his core body, but it doesn't stick out. I mean, he's small, so it's not as egregious as pictures make it look. It's there. If you look at him straight from the side, it looks a little weird, but it doesn't really stick out any further back from his body than the Studio Series 1 Bumblebee does. It's just that he doesn't have the frame coming back to help make it look more integrated. But yeah, there he is. And you can angle the wings back a little bit if you don't want them to be quite as visible from the front. He's all folded up. Posability-wise, he does have a ball joint at the head. He's got ball joints at the shoulders, up in there. And he's got that transformation hinge to lift his arms up and down a little bit. Hinge elbows, they do swivel. They're on a swivel peg in there, but it's tight, so be careful with that, because if it's stuck, he's small enough that it would be very easy to think, oh, it just needs a little force, and end up twisting that peg off. His hands are just on hinges. You saw that it's not pinned in. Well, that seems like it might be easy enough to modify it to take a pin. So his hands do pop off a little bit. He's got the aforementioned waist swivel. He's got ball joint hips with a little swivel just below them. Pretty decent knee range, mostly hindered by his backpack and the shin, the back of the calf here. As mentioned, he's got the forward and back tilt in the foot as well as that ankle tilt. So he's pretty posable for a little guy. Some quick size comparisons before we start armoring him up. Here he is with, well, with the Bumblebees. Here he is with G1 Bumblebee and Masterpiece Bumblebee. So again, you know how big G1 Bumblebee is. You can see he's not, or even Masterpiece Bumblebee. He's actually shorter than the Masterpiece at the head. Here he is with the Studio Series 1 movie Bumblebee. And again, about the same height to the top of the head. He's got a much more expressive head. He doesn't look as ridiculously, like, I don't know, baked out of his mind or like on some sort of drugs trippy that the Studio Series 1 does. Yeah, a much cooler Bumblebee. Like I like his Volkswagen alt mode for all sorts of various reasons, and he's just a cuter little Bumblebee than whatever this is. Here he is with Studio Series Jazz, and again, if you have, and he's actually, there's a little warp here in my display bay, or like the piece I'm using underneath him, but he's actually a little shorter than Jazz, a little bit bulkier because of like the backpack, but yeah, he's small. He's cool, but he's small. And here he is with the Voyager Optimus, who is not even in frame because I had to zoom in so much because he's so tiny. So yeah, now weapon-wise, like I said, we have all this stuff right here if you want to make him ready to fight. Let's bring this back down. So he's got his arm blade, and again, he stands better on a flat surface and not, I have kind of a plasticky covering over the foam core that I've got set up here in my review space, so he's a little, it's not 100% flat down here. So he's got the arm blade that can go on either arm. You just plug it on like that, and he's got kind of a cool arm blade weapon there. He's got a Gatling gun arm, which pops off. You pop this off right here, and I reattach this piece at the elbow. And then of course, he has the battle mask, and you just pop the front half of his face off. Think of John Travolta and Nick Cage. Just pop that off, and then you got this kind of just eyeballs and a frame. Then just plug his battle mask on, and there he is, ready to fight some Decepticons. Now, I did mention that there are ways to store this. His face, there's a little peg here on both windows. There's a little peg hole, I guess, here on the end of each window. So it's a little weird to have him carry a face around like he's Optimus Prime or something. But you can peg this on right here and store that on his back wing. which is, yeah, a little macabre, but macabre. Right there, you can store, he's got the same kind of squarish thing on there, so you can take this and you can store his arm back here on this peg. It's supposed to be able to fit on this peg. Maybe I'm doing it the wrong way. Well, no, that won't work either. But the peg right there, you can store it on. Does this actually go up any higher? I don't think it does. Oh, there we go. You can get that up a little higher. And then maybe get the clearance you need to peg that on. There we go. Okay, it popped off. But there we go. Oh, come on, leg. So you can store his arm back there. And you can also store this arm back there as well when you're not using it. So again, it's a little weird, especially the face. Like the weapons on the back doesn't seem so weird. The faceplate down here on the door wing is a little odd. But oh well. And same with this one. You can put this one here as well. Yeah, you can take his sword, stores across here. Yeah, you can put the sword over those pegs as well. Although you can only store one at a time. So if you have this on, maybe will it fit on that? I guess you might be able to store it like that if you have both arms attached on the back. You pop this off, it might still fit. Yeah, there's just enough room if you wanted to store both of those weapons here on the back. Although the peg here does not want to stick on. This is where they're supposed to go. I had them sitting on here earlier, but now it's decided that it's just not going to stay on there. You always have it facing downward, I guess. There you go. So he does have technical weapon storage in robot mode. It is not as well integrated as his vehicle mode storage. But if you're just afraid of losing parts while you're playing with him, there you go. So yeah, fun little toy. A nice little representation of Bee. I'm going to have to maybe tighten up his hips. They aren't super loose, but every time I bump them, they get just enough out of position that he doesn't want to stand straight. Although, again, some of that is my backdrop. But yeah, there it is. Studio Series 18 Bumblebee, the Volkswagen. And one last thing, because it's just become kind of a running thing that I'm going to forget this when I'm doing a Studio Series, the backdrop. It's Charlie's garage from the movie. And one of the things that I really liked about it, and he can stand there in front of it. And one of the things that I really, oh, he's really blown out. I focused on this before I brought it on camera. But one of the things I really like about the design and what struck me in the trailer is that the garage set, and I don't know, I haven't dug out the comics to confirm, but that whole scene in the garage, just the look of it and the scene itself reminds me a lot of in the old G1 comic from Marvel when Buster finds Bumblebee and drives him home to Sparkplug's garage and they're fixing him and it's like, please help me, I'm dying, and all that stuff. I really like, whether it was intentional or not, and I can't imagine it isn't, but I could be wrong, but it really had that same feel of that scene from the old G1 comic, and I thought that was cool. So yeah, you get a little backdrop of Charlie's garage as his backdrop, and it does have has the addition of the Bumblebee logo there on the bottom there. All right, so there we go. That's done. I really like him. I like the accessories. They're easy to swap out. I think he's just a cool little dude and a nice little figure of the Studio Series Bumblebee. I'm looking forward to the movie, which is something I have not been able to say about a Transformers movie in a few years. So it should be fun.